Hello and welcome to the Weekly Dinosaw. It's week 20, first week of May. Apologies for the 3D printer in the background, can't stop it, it'd be a disaster, so you might just have to deal with the humming. So yeah, 7 more interesting things I saw last week. So first of all, let's talk about batteries. These are car batteries, electric vehicle batteries, and one of the big issues with cars is essentially range anxiety, as it's called. So with a petrol car, diesel car, even a sort of a liquid gas car, you can just fill it up and you've got 400 miles of range. Obviously with an electric vehicle, you may get 200, 300, may get less, and then it's maybe going to charge for an hour or 45 minutes. And that's anxiety. So that's why people, and cost, because they're expensive as well. So one of the things that's been sort of around in the ether really is this idea of having a unified battery, and essentially you don't own the battery, you just drive into a shed like this, I guess, and you basically have the battery replaced on the fly. So the other alternative is obviously hydrogen fuel, and you have a fuel cell, but nobody really likes filling up with liquid hydrogen at the side of the road. So there's a company called NIO in China who've been doing this for a few years, but now they're really trying to go for a unified standard, and the Chinese are getting behind this. The vehicle you can see right now is actually the NIO car, so they're trying to build the standard into the car already, and hopefully more people will actually take it on. So we've seen this in things like power tools, where they used to have the battery in the power tool and you stick it on the wall and charge it, and now you actually get a unified battery that you can put in any of your tools. So this is not a new concept, but this might stop that kind of range anxiety really sort of taking hold in cars. It's a dinosaur, so there is, at the moment, there's going to be a COVID example. So this one is a device, I think this is out of Northwestern University in America, and it was originally devised for people to be monitored after a stroke. So it could do things like heart rate and temperature, and it also could check for vibrations and murmurs. So the vibration is also able to detect coughs, for instance. So it's not actually detecting sound, it's detecting the vibration of the cough. So there's no privacy issues there, per se. So essentially what it does is it's now been tuned to listen for the sort of dry cough that you get when you have COVID. And repeated, etc., etc. So it monitors it, sends it to a mobile phone, and that can then alert people around you or yourself. So it could be just a device you stick on when you think you might have something, and it can track all your symptoms, including your cough, alert medical staff, etc. So, really interesting device. Not seen people tracking the actual cough itself in a device like this before. Mozilla have come up with quite an interesting feature, I guess. A lot of people use Chrome, a lot of people use Safari. Mozilla's still out there. Firefox used to rule the roost at one point. This is a really interesting feature that they're betaing at the moment, if that's a phrase. So what this does is it creates a proxy email. So if you're typing out a form to sign up to a service or get an email or something like that to receive a podcast or something, you don't really know where your email is going to end up. And all the spam email you're getting proves that those emails go onto the wider internet and get used. And if you unsubscribe from an email, it probably just ticks your name against you're still active. So it's a bit of a nightmare. So what Firefox are doing is a new plugin or a new add-on to their browser called Private Relay. So as you're filling out a form, when you get to the email bit, you've already registered your email with Firefox, so it knows who you are. But when it comes out to the form, it just generates a random email address. So that email address goes into the service you've just subscribed to, and basically if they send you an email to that address, Firefox will then forward it onto your real address. So the service you've signed up for never really knows or never knows your real email address. And if at any time you see it leak onto the internet or you need to stop it, you just stop the service through Firefox. So it's really interesting. If you value your privacy, it's great. Possibly if you are hiding behind your email, then this is maybe also a bad thing. Likewise, if you probably run databases or CRM systems, you might start to notice a lot of really weird emails start to come through quite soon. So interesting, see where that goes. Interesting report, I love a report, and this one is about a phenomenon called aphantasia, or hyperphantasia as well. So aphantasia is where you cannot imagine something in your mind's eye, you cannot visualize things in your brain. And it turns out 20% of people who work in technical fields, so scientists, developers, those sorts of things, have aphantasia. So that basically means they find it difficult, or if not impossible, to visualize things in their heads. So that allows them to hold a lot of numbers and a lot of complex theories in state, in their raw values, to kind of calculate the outcome of those and not sort of get sidetracked into what that could mean and what is the bigger picture, essentially. It leaves it right to the end. So if you have hyperphantasia, you're the opposite. You find it very easy to visualize things. 25% of people in the creative industries have hyperphantasia. So it's really interesting, and in which case you can visualize things. That's great if you're an architect or a designer, etc., etc. So what does it really mean? Well, if you work in maybe recruitment and you work in technical recruitment, it may be something to start testing your recruits for, because it gives you a good sense of whether they've got what it takes to be, that sort of super technical person. Twitter are doing some more tests in America. This is iOS only at the moment. However, it's kind of been called for, although there's a version of this I'd really love. But this is, if you're about to send a tweet that might be deemed offensive and you haven't quite figured out, or it's going to be offensive, it gives you a little bit of a cooling off period where it says, like, okay, this might be offensive, do you want to revise it? So this is called just obviously the revise filter. It does what it says on the tin. Nobody quite knows what the algorithm is really looking for just yet, but it's broadly based on the terms and conditions of Twitter, which is no sort of prolonged harassment, etc., etc. So it might be that if you're constantly doing it to somebody, then this might pop up, or if it's plainly offensive. So really, really interesting how they're doing this. Only a few people have seen this at the time in America, but I like this. I'd really love this for spelling mistakes or for all tweets. Just give me a minute. So once I've posted it and I realise there's a typo in it, can I revise it, please? However, might be an interesting thing that people start to abusing for marketing. I don't know where we can go with this. Neuralink. So if you are a fan of Joe Rogan's podcasts, he's done another one with Elon Musk. So the last one he did with Elon Musk was the infamous one where he smoked a joint during the interview. However, if you want to know how Elon Musk and Grimes are going to pronounce their baby's name, then you might want to watch that podcast as well. They cover quite a lot of things in the podcast, definitely worth a watch. Links at the bottom. However, he did also talk about his Neuralink company, which is a small device that you can plant on the brain. It's rechargeable, etc., so you don't have to keep opening it up. However, it has little wires that go into the brain. It can stimulate the neurons in the brain. So where that's useful are one of two things, I guess, two different directions. One is you can listen to the brain where there aren't enough synapse firings or neurons firings. Things like a paralysis or deafness, or things like Alzheimer's, or any sort of memory loss. So the memories are just clusters of synapses that can fire in a certain way. So if those aren't firing, aren't communicating, you can stimulate those and amplify them. Another way it does is it can actually listen to what's about to go on and fire some sort of preemptive synapses to stop some synapses firings going on. So things like if you have epilepsy, for instance, which is crudely, it's a sort of cascading of energy in the brain that can't be stopped and leads to a seizure, and it seizes all the other parts of the brain that control muscles and all that sort of stuff. So really interesting device. The reason I'm mentioning is this: he actually sort of hinted that this might be due for human trials within a year. So so that's kind of interesting. So it's not really a new concept. I've been following this thing for maybe 20 years. There's some really interesting things about people who've had their sight brought back through devices very similar to this. So it could be that everybody has these implanted one day to make everybody awesome. Anyway, watch that one. And finally, we have Michaela, and she's been signed by CAA. Now, CAA are one of the sort of the biggest kind of I guess representative groups for artists, so singers, actors, etc., film stars. So Michaela is a completely CGI made-up person. I think she started in 2016. I think it's 2.2 million followers on Instagram and about 500,000 on TikTok as well. She also won, or was voted 25 most influential people on the internet by Time in 2018. So she's completely CGI, as you can maybe tell. However, she's she's a marketing dream in that she can do whatever you want for your brand. So she's already released two music tracks. So she's been signed up, I think, to Prada, Calvin Klein, Samsung, for instance, have also taken her on. So she's now signed up to the Creative Artists Agency. to represent her. So that's a big move. So if you work with influencers or in this world, then you probably need to get yourself one of these as well. So there. So that's it. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.